Tinnitus is a condition that afflicts over 10% of the UK's adult population. It's a ringing, buzzing or other oral phenomenon that's something you can't escape from, but which seems to be happening only in your head. And for anyone who suffers from it, it's a torment. But for a composer, tinnitus is an especially complex condition. Bedřich Smetana in the 19th century composed a version of the high pitch that he heard inside his brain into the last movement of his searing, fate-protesting string quartet, From My Life. And today, Kerry Andrew has made a string quartet that's composed with and against and in counterpoint alongside the sounds of her tinnitus, emotionally and musically. She told us about her life with tinnitus.
I've been deaf in my right ear since birth, and more recently, in the last 3 years, have had tinnitus in that side. So I hear this note. Ah! It's always that note. And so I thought that I should try and get my brain used to that sound by singing it. So I mostly hear it at night, and if I do hear it, then I might just go ah! back, try and sort of match the tone. And what it does every time I sing that note, the drone, the ringing in my ear, slowly fades out, and then sometimes it just fades back again, and I sing it again. Sometimes I sing it, and it fades out and it comes back an octave lower. Da. And sometimes I imagine that when I sing it and it comes back, that there's almost a chord, but it's quite sort of whispery, but you can feel like you can just imagine, you can just about hear other notes. And as I was writing this piece, I tried to do that more and try and listen and try and work out what the notes were. So there's some chordal moments in the string quartet, which are representations of me. It's sort of like battling with my ear, but also trying to just be musical with it, because if it's going to be there, I might as well do something with it. Since I've had tinnitus, I've talked to other musicians about it and realised that I'm definitely not the only one, and perhaps some musicians suffer a little bit in silence. And whilst I have it, I don't really know a huge amount about it, or indeed how to manage it as well as I might. So I've come to Pindrop Hearing in London to talk to Rekesh Patel, who's the senior clinical audiologist. Hi, thank you. I'm Kerry.
Hi, Rekesh. Very nice to meet
you.
you. So tinnitus is the perception of a sound that only the individual can hear themselves. And it can be a multitude of different sounds. The most common ones are individuals who have subjective tinnitus, so people who say they've got a ringing or buzzing in their ears, but it can go from anything. It can be a roaring, a whooshing, and each individual that has tinnitus will sort of almost have their own sort of personal sound.
I feel like I can feel it. It's almost like a sort of slightly physical sensation. I don't know if that's me just... Well, I'm sure it is just psychological. It sort of feels like it has like a tangible presence.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what makes tinnitus so real for a lot of people, because even though we say it's a phantom sound or it's a hallucination, it's not that you can relate to it, but it's a sound. It's something that's physically there. Yeah, even though it's just neuronal firing within the auditory cortex. Generally, with most individuals that have tinnitus, there is an underlying cause, which is generally a degree of hearing loss. What we find with some people is stress can be a large factor. It can be related to an acoustic trauma, so a lot of loud noise, whether that's done socially or through work. And unfortunately, with some people, it just kind of stays on. Most individuals tend to habituate to it. Not just the fact of getting used to it, is actually we get to a point where your brain's not automatically listening out for it, very much like the sound of your own breathing.
Am I right in thinking you have a few sounds that you can show us so that we can understand what some people might hear?
The most common sound that I'm just going to play now is this sort of higher pitch ringing sound, so maybe similar to what you have.
It's similar, except thankfully mine is a bit lower, because that's very shrill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's annoying. I don't want it to be there, but it's slightly more pleasing sounding.
Yeah. What I'll play now is some narrowband noises, which has a little bit more of a hiss to it. Again, which is quite common to what people experience.
It feels very textural, very more physical somehow than the pure tone.
Yeah.
Because I've started to have tinnitus, I talked about it and found actually plenty of colleagues of mine working in different genres of music suffer from some degree of tinnitus. And often our problem feels like, well, that we think we shouldn't be in noisy environments, but we can't help being in noisy environments because that's our job. I think people might associate hearing loss in musicians and tinnitus in musicians with people who plug in, who play rock instruments and who are in sort of stadium gigs and the rest of it. But I definitely know that orchestral musicians might suffer from, they might be sitting in front of a very loud brass section, and that acoustic brass section makes a lot of noise.
A lot of noise. With most of them, obviously, that's their career, that's what they love doing. And for me, I'm a really big believer, even if you have tinnitus, is not to stop what you love doing. We've got to change certain things, but when you stop doing something you love because of tinnitus, all you're doing is you're just creating a negative context around it. You're creating this large negative emotion, and what tends to happen is the tinnitus will react with you. With your emotions, it's going to react with it. So with a lot of my patients, I say, look, if this is what you love and this is what you're going to be doing, let's keep doing it, but let's wear some suitable earplugs.